Jessica Communications or Bob?
Yep, I think Bob and Steve are gonna take this.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Steve Hamilton with Whitney Consulting Group. It's good to be here with you again. We thought it would be a good time to take the opportunity to review an organization structure analysis that we completed on behalf of the city. We presented you with an executive summary of that report. The report itself is several pages. If you have interest in it, I have copies available for you. Basically, a year ago was the snowstorm, but then a few days later was the day that 4 employees of the department left the employment of the city. So this was part of the examination of how to proceed forward, how to meet the future and the challenges of assessing property in the city in the best way possible, and how to refill in a thoughtful way the ranks of the city department. And so the executive summary focuses on finding the most efficient pathway to make those corrections. Whitney Consulting Group has been an important part of that. You've gotten to know Bob over the last several months, and so we hope, and our plan is that through the next few years, we'll be able to work ourselves out of this contract and get to a point where the city assessing department will be able to stand on its own. Focusing on the immediate needs was the ability to contract some of those important services. We think that the most efficient pathway for a chief assessor is to find, recruit, and/or train somebody to take on that role here in the city. But some of the other necessary functions included a lot of inspections of property. Those are fairly easy to contract out, and the city had an existing contract with Vision to provide some of the office support that could be converted into providing a lot more inspection services, which has been completed. So the city is continuing to meet its obligations with respect to assessing, and the pathway is probably going to take another couple of years to get to a final place where the staff of the city assessing department will be able to take on most of the obligations. Although, part of our recommendation is that there be a continued reliance on contracted services for inspections, and that is a balance of plans. If it were necessary to fill positions to meet all of the obligations with internal staff members, I think the number that we came up with was 14 staff total.
It says in the thing here 13.
13, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. I wish my memory were
Trying
better.
to, yeah, there you go again, just adding more people to our staff, Steve.
That's not the recommendation that we're making.
Oh.
The recommendation is to have a balance of those contracted services and to land on a number far south of the 13 people.
Is that the 9?
That's the 9.
Yeah.
So, and that is the best way to meet the obligations and the workload that the city assessing department has.
Okay, why do you think that? Why? I mean, contracted services are probably costing us more than the employees, right?
Well, so contracted services don't require the city to create long-term obligations such as retirement funding, insurance obligations. So There is a significant benefit for having employees in terms of the continuity and retention of knowledge within the organization. However, there are benefits to those contracted services. And to be clear, those are not contracted services that Whitney Consulting Group would be interested in even approaching. We're going to recommend that you find other contractors, like Vision, to conduct those inspections. That's not our forte. Whitney Consulting Group's forte is to help cities like Nashua to respond and rebound from these large changes that can happen. In smaller towns, they may be more disruptive, but we focus on providing the expertise at the highest level. So we wouldn't be interested, and we probably wouldn't even propose to have a contract to inspect properties within the city of Nashua.
So have you looked at or done any analysis as to the seasonality of these contracted employees? And I don't mean just from the 4 seasons, but more of through the course of an evaluation or reval.
So that's
process.
a great question, and it also helps to understand the dynamics of the economics, because especially with a large city, of over 30,000 properties, construction season expands and contracts with changes in the general economy and the demand for housing or places of business. As those economic conditions improve, as they have over the last several years, there's a higher demand for inspections because there are more building permits, more new construction, more apartment complexes, more office buildings or industrial buildings being converted into residential properties. All of those things require more inspections to be made. And contracting allows the city's effort to be more dynamic, so it can respond better to the changes. Rather than hiring people in a time of boom and then having to lay them off and when the economics change or turn down, then you can simply use the contracting process to have the appropriate effort to meet those obligations.
And if I could, one of the other things is in New Hampshire, there's a heavy workload at this time of year, as far as field work. The effective date is April 1st. We want to, not that we can inspect every property with a permit on April 1st, but we do want to, be close to April 1st with a lot of those new construction inspections. A firm like Vision is covering all the New England states and maybe more than that, and they don't all have that April 1st inventory deadline. So they can help us load up at this time of year without them having an issue elsewhere. They can take up the slack in other states at different times of the year. Where if you have a staff, if you were staffed up to take care of that heavy workload for the 2 or 3 months, 4 months around April 1st, we'd be, looking for that staff to do something the rest of the year. They're not all going to have the expertise to do the abatements, the valuations. That would be measuring and listing staff. They would only be certified to do the field inspections. So it's more flexibility, and I think for that reason, that mix financially is better for the city than staffing up for 13 people.
So you mentioned the potential for automation. Is any of the difference between the 9 and the 13 an assumed impact from increased automation?
So that has not been built into this estimate yet, but the number of 9 total could be impacted by further improvements in the way that the systems can be automated to bring some of the sale data into the computer-assisted mass appraisal system. And I know Bob has been exploring that with Vision, the CAMA contractor, to make sure that we're at the leading edge of being able to bring that into the city. That may allow us to reduce that number to 8, or 8 with a part-time person. We don't know what the savings will be at this point, but our plan to move forward will be able to be adjusted for that kind of savings.
Would the Whitney Group be helping in finding candidates and, like, for instance, especially for the certified assessor's position?
Yes, and so we anticipate that our role will both be in helping to attract and recruit, but then also to mentor and assist a person to get to the highest level of certification and feel confident in taking on the role.
Okay.
Just to pick up on what Jay was saying, what other types of automation is coming down the pike in this industry that can really make it easier for us?
So there have been several different attempts over the last 10 years to try and provide some more automated data collection processes. They've met with various levels of failure, especially in New England, because here in New England we don't have a lot of homogeneous housing stock, and so places that you can think of like Georgia or Florida, where you'll go into a development and there will be 750 identical homes. They lend themselves to automating some of the data collection a little bit better. And one-story dwellings lend themselves to more automated measurement tools. There have been some LiDAR-based measurement tools that seek to make the data collection process a lot more streamlined, but they have really not been very successful here in New England, and especially in New Hampshire. There are a few that may help in nibbling at the edges of efficiency, and some of those are field data collection using tablets and automated systems that link automatically to the CAMA system, so that rather than a two-step process of collecting the data in the field and then doing the data entry in the office, it's more of a one-step process.
Like, you take an example of that property that we looked at on, I think it was Lynn Street, where there was an outbuilding that was not on his property. I mean, are we getting to the point where we can have AI pick that up for us and identify it, and so that we don't have to send somebody else?
So, Eagle View pictometry, that's that oblique aerial photography. For years, they've had a service where they could compare footprints between, a 2018 flyover and a 2020 flyover. And I believe when Angelo was still here, he was using that. There are some false positives and some properties that are missed, because if the flyover was done at a slightly different time of day, there's going to be a shadow that it might pick up as a building footprint. So it still involves verification on the ground on those things. But it's certainly, and I don't think that the city has signed up for that service, certainly in the last 5 or 6 years. But that tool is still used in the office.
Yeah, pictometry is very helpful. We have it, we've been blessed to get it every 2 years, I think since it's 10 years, 15 years. So this is an off year, which makes it a little harder, but we do try to get it right around April 1st, and that way we can actually see, if someone calls up in August and says, I demoed that building in March, why is it on my tax bill or whatever, we can pull up the photo of April 14th and go, well, it's still there, or, oh, you're right, it was down. That gives us a tool. But we're on an every 2 years thing, and it's actually, I don't know if it comes, the finances come out of assessing or GIS, because now those art departments are separated, so. But we work with GIS on that.
And currently, it isn't in our budget for 2026, so.
That's bad.
Whether it's in GIS budget or not,
I hope so.
That's not in our budget,
nope.
and we have 5, we're looking to get to 9 people in the office, and we have 5 now, is what I read.
Correct.
Yeah.
On that point, as we look to staff up over the next couple of years or so, are there certain positions that we'll be prioritizing?
So, and that will swap from year to year. Right now, the priority is on administrative staff, because Jessica, I know she serves you well here, but this is an example of one of our field assessing staff doing administrative duties. We need to make sure that we align properly the duties that everybody has with the side of the office that they're on. So it does break down distinctly between administrative obligations and the field assessing staff.
So if the question is what's next, it's an administrative person. That's not just to free Jessica up, but to free Michelle up to do higher level things than she's doing now.
It's one of the other things that we have, this whole process has brought to light, is the need to be prepared. Nobody likes to think about the day that 4 people walk out the door. But the way that you prepare for that is to make sure that you have all of your processes and procedures documented appropriately. And we don't have good documentation of those procedures and policies right now. So we need to focus energy on making sure that we have that good documentation. Not that the staff is going to walk out the door ever again, that that's ever going to happen, but I think the only prudent way to proceed is to make sure that we have that documentation. That will help every time a new employee is hired. They'll have a resource to be able to rely on to understand what is it that we're all trying to do, and how can we do that most efficiently.
So have you created the systems for this new administrative person yet, so that they know what they're going to be moving into?
So we're working right now to try and.
Yeah, so the position is posted, and so either we would give one of the current administrative staff members the job that Jessica's currently doing for the board, and hand over the deeds that I do that take 25 to 30 hours a week to either a current administrative staff or to the new staff member.
When you say hand it over, have you written the manual yet for those?
No.
Okay.
Just to be clear, there is a current policy and procedures manual. It just,
I'm talking about specifics, like what Michelle's trying to get rid of, get off her plate.
Yeah, it's in the existing manual, but it hasn't been updated in a while. It certainly doesn't reflect a staff of 5.
Yeah.
So that's got to be looked at.
Yeah.
And so that's where we are in terms of helping the department to not only recover but also to achieve and succeed in the assessment of property. And I think part of that is to have that good documentation, have a good focused plan to continue to evolve and to make a lot of good decisions with the staff that's there and the resources that the city already commits to assessing.
Well, it appears to be a thorough analysis, and I certainly appreciate it.
Can we get a copy of that report, the full report that you were talking about?
I anticipated that question, so.
And while Steve hands that, I want to give you an update on how many cases we got for the 2024 abatement season. There were 238 total. A couple came in the mail March 31st that we consider untimely, but we're giving the tax rep an opportunity to prove that they were timely. There's no postmark on the envelope, so we can't verify that they were mailed on time. So before denying them outright, I've reached out to the tax rep to say, hey, do you have evidence of when you actually, submitted this to the USPS? So 238 total. There were 94 commercial and 144 residential. And then including what's before you today, we've reviewed and made recommendations on 39 of the 238 appeals. We did take a pause in the volume of reviewing those to do more field work around that April 1st. And once that is complete and data entered, we're going to get back on the gas on taking a look at the rest of those 200 abatement requests. We do want to get through those by the July 1st. Actually, our date to respond is going to be extended, just like the abatement period got extended. So our date to respond will be July 17th, roughly. So we'll get back on that pretty quickly here.
In terms of other appeals, there are a number of cases that had been stayed during the pendency of the appeal of Pheasant Lane Mall versus the city of Nashua. The question of what ratio or if a ratio should be applied, that issue has been resolved, and so the cases that have been stayed are now being freed up. There are, I believe, 3 appeals at the Board of Tax and Land Appeals that have been scheduled for hearing now, 2 of them in late May and 1 in August.
We've actually
think we
gotten another batch. I think there's a total
It's
of,
like 8 or 9.
Yeah, this at least.
All of them.
They're now coming up.
Because there was-
They're all
Yeah.
scheduled at this point.
It was 8 or
at the
9
end of the
total.
year.
yeah, and we're working on getting a calendar put together to plan that out. But, yeah, they've
Yeah.
booked them all, and we've also gotten an order on one of the 23 cases that we've had a settlement meeting and didn't agree, so, and I believe that one's in August too, so.
Good. And finally, the results of the 2024 ratio study, which gives us the level of confidence in the results of the revaluation, have been, that study's been completed by the New Hampshire Department of Revenue Administration. And they have found that for all of the property in the city, the revaluation determined a median level of assessment of 95.27. Achieving market value means having that ratio be between 0.9 and 1.1. So that level of assessment is well within the standard on achieving market value. Also importantly, the coefficient of dispersion, the measurement of how far away from that measurement of central tendency the average ratio is, which needs to be below 20, came in at 8.63. And that's a good measurement for a city of mixed property with a sample size of, I think, 628 properties. I'm sorry, 890 total properties. Sales. And the last measurement that's really important in that ratio study is the price-related differential. That measures the vertical equity, whether there is inequity giving an advantage to either higher valued properties or lower valued properties. That price-related differential needs to fall within a range of 0.98 to 1.03. As calculated, it's 1.01, which is almost exactly in the middle of that range, and so there doesn't appear to be any vertical inequities within the the system as it was calibrated in the revaluation.
Do you have a copy of this?
Yeah, I have copies.
So just so I understand that, that's kind of making sure that the higher valued properties of more luxury homes don't get assessed differently than the lower valued homes? Is that?
Correct.
Okay.
Because the vertical equity is an important determination beyond just the breakdown. Now, this summary sheet is on, where I'll be recorded. The summary sheet breaks down a number of different stratum. By use of the property, single-family homes, multifamilies, apartment buildings, et cetera. And you can see the median ratio is that level of performance for each of the categories. The important thing to consider when you try to interpret the results is that, like with any kind of poll or survey, the number of participants is an important consideration. So if you have a very small number of samples in a particular class, you're likely to have a much more distributed result. And so, for example, if you look at, where is the residential land? Strata 22, residential land. We can see that the ratio there, as indicated, is about 65% of market value. But that's with a very small number of sales, only 5 sales. Importantly, the DRA calculates a confidence interval around each of the measured statistics. And so you can think of that as the plus or minus in a poll of a percentage number. But that confidence interval gives you a comfort level that the true measure is found within a certain range of indicators. With that small sample, only 5 properties that were in that vacant residential land class, the DRA wasn't able to calculate what that confidence interval would be. So there's no way to say with any degree of confidence whether that 65 was influenced by chance, just the selection of those properties.
Yeah, I don't believe they calculate those statistics if there are fewer than 8 sales in a strata. So if you look at that page 1, there's a column, I believe it's the valid column. It gives you the count of how many sales occurred in those strata, and anything that's less than 8, you're not going to see the full statistics on the left because they can't be calculated. And the second page, by the way, is the test of whether we meet the requirements of the Assessing Standards Board. And the requirements are that, as Steve mentioned, you be between 90 and 110. And the bottom tier of that will tell you whether you passed or not. So if the criteria met, it says true. PRD 98 to 103, true, we met that requirement. Coefficient dispersion of 20 or less, we met that requirement. And then they calculate 3 strata, and it's group GC1, GC2, GC3. That's area improved residential, area improved non-residential, so commercial, industrial, and unimproved, the vacant land. And those 3 strata have to be within 5% of the overall stats, but they include the confidence interval. So as long as the confidence interval overlaps, we meet the requirements. So we met all the requirements. The only one that was not considered was the vacant land because there weren't enough sales, and under the criteria met it says NA. So they don't apply that test if you don't have at least 8 sales in that strata. And I know you just got this, so you probably haven't had an opportunity to formulate all your observations and questions. Certainly I can address that at the next meeting if there's any follow-up.
These three strata on the bottom, those random, or are those always those three categories?
It's always those three categories. That's in the standards. Any
Between the three, would every parcel be included? Yeah. Between those three categories, every parcel is included, maybe except
Right.
utilities or.
Yeah, the ones that might not be
city-owned.
are, like if this unclassified, I don't believe those are included.
That covers the majority of
Yeah.
everything.
Typically, a category like a boat dock, which we don't have here. There are some classifications that are pretty unique in certain areas, but otherwise it includes, and a residential includes anything with 4 or fewer units. So all singles, all condos, all mobile homes, all 2 families, 3 families, 4 families.
It's a riverfront property. Do they get assessed for halfway into the river valuation?
No, I don't think they do, because they don't own the water, right? In this
Right.
state, the
The
water,
state owns the water.
whether it's a lake or a
Right.
river.
But they do get assessed for the frontage, the value of the frontage. So, I mean, we call it shorthand a property tax, but it's really a property value tax. So anything that enhances the value of a property, like having frontage on a river or a lake, or even an expansive view of mountains, those things are going to increase the value of the property, and so they will be considered in the valuation. And those determinations are reflected in the results here.
So the categories on page 1 are not all of the categories that they have. These are the categories in which we had sales that they analyzed. So I don't believe we had any waterfront sales. I know in Manchester, every year I would have a few, so they'd be on the report. In Manchester, my report was never one page, the breakdown like this. There was always a second page, maybe with 2 or 3 lines on it. And that's one of the differences.
The strata begins at 1, not 11, correct?
No, I think the lowest number is 11.
Yeah.
They're all two-digit
Two digits,
codes.
right.
I'm sorry?
They're all 2-digit codes, so that the lowest
Oh,
number is 11.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
And there aren't 100, I don't believe. I don't believe every number is used.
No, in fact, so we do the valuation work, including revaluations in the city of Laconia annually. And the equalization summary report for Laconia is typically 2 pages because of the wider variety of property types that include things like steel boat racks for boat storage that are condominiums, or individual boat slips or docks that are condominiums. So there's just a very different set of properties for every community, and these codes are used as needed for the community at hand.
Yeah, they probably have numbers that aren't used because new things are coming on, charging stations, for instance, things like that. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Yep, no, thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is old business. I don't see any. New business items. Jessica, do you want to?
I think Bob's gonna go down the recommendations for the 2024
Okay.
abatements we've got for today.
All right, so when you're ready.
Yep.
And there is one abatement that we found that might be out of order, so I'll make sure that we're talking about the correct one as we go through here. And the first one we're looking at is 21 Mercury Lane. And I want to make sure you have that as your first one.
Yep.
Yes.
That was a manufactured home that, and we had a couple of these last time. The first time they sell, stamps are not required, so we don't have a sale price to go by. This individual purchased the mobile home for less than the assessment, and provided us with the purchase and sale contract to provide that evidence. They paid $270, and we agreed that that is what the assessment should have been, so we're recommending that abatement from $352,400 to $270.
They made the decision on the 352,400 was based on an exterior assessment. I mean, how could it be that far off from what a typical new mobile home sells for?
Well, I have my theories, but we're still investigating. I can share that with you if you like. It looks to me, so again, we don't have anything that's new that sells. We don't have the stamps to tell what the sale price was. So they set all the tables based on the sales of existing homes, mobile homes, and I don't believe they had a whole lot that were newer to go by, and that may have affected how they set up those tables. So certainly and I think we had 3 of these this season, so we'll be taking a look at that and you know, certainly my desire would be to, when we list, you know, if we have any new that we list this year, you know, before we set a final value, we're going to ask if we can have the purchase contract to know what the sale price was, just to make sure that we don't blow it up. And then we'll keep that in our little folder, you know, look at this more carefully next reval. I always keep a folder like that and handy, and it might be one property card I throw in there I want to look at next time, or it might be, you know, a condo development that seems off, and certainly this is one of the things we're going to want to look at.
So if the park owner buys a brand-new unit, the selling price from the manufacturer is X, but we're basing the assessment on whatever they sell that to the end user?
Yes.
Okay, so knowing what the manufacturer charges isn't going to help us?
No.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? Can I get a motion to approve
Comments?
to approve the abatement for the property at 21 Mercury Lane for 2024?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Next one, Bob?
So this is the one that might be out of order. If you're looking at the cover sheet, it's number 5, but next in your book, I think it's 19 White Plains. Is that what you guys have?
Yes.
Okay, so let's do 19 White Plains.
So we'll go in order of the notebook instead of the cover sheet.
We do 19 White Plains?
White Plains.
Okay.
Yes.
So the taxpayer had an appraisal completed as a part of this abatement process. Trying to see what the original value was.
615.
So that appraisal was a retrospective appraisal back to April 1st. I reviewed that appraisal just to make sure that the data was accurate. It used 6 sales. One of those sales wasn't considered by the city to be arm's length. Our criteria when we report to the Department of Revenue is any sale that involves an estate sale. You know, there's probate's involved, or in this case, I think it was the successor trustee after the former owner or the grantor passed away. Those are excluded from that study that we just talked about. So we exclude them from consideration for appraisals. Seeing as how there were 6 total sales, I didn't feel that the one sale that we couldn't consider, it didn't affect it. The 5 sales that were used were reasonable. Did our own internal search to make sure that those were the best sales available. The criteria that I look for was anything within 10% of the square footage and anything that was somewhat comparable in age. I didn't find any comparable sales that were significantly different, better or worse than the ones used in the appraisals. So our recommendation is that the appraised value is a reasonable proximity of what the assessment should have been, and we're recommending the abatement.
Any questions?
No.
Bob, the letter here to the owner Has that already been sent out?
It has not. This I kind of prepared it with both as a recommendation to the board, but as also as a report to the taxpayer on the results. I don't want to just send them either an approval or a denial letter. I want them to understand what our decision was based on. But I also want you to understand what our recommendation is, so it's kind of a 2-for-1. And I did include where I would normally sign a letter that this is pending your review and approval. This would
Okay.
not go out until you make a decision.
All right, and then that sentence would be removed.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions on 19 White Plains?
No.
Can I get a motion to approve the abatement for the property at 19 White Plains Drive for 2024?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Next one, Bob?
Yep, the next one should be, in your packet, should be 15 Indiana Drive.
Yep.
And that was a simple data correction. There was a patio listed on the property that wasn't there. Jessica confirmed that it wasn't there, removed it from the assessment, and the recommendation is to go from the 546,100 to 544,900, which is just the value of that patio.
Any questions?
No.
Can I get a motion to approve the abatement for the property at 15 Indiana Drive for 2024?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Next one?
Yep, the next one in your packet should be 14 Valiant Lane, last name Easton. This was another data correction, although it wasn't just a simple patio, there was more involved. So there were, an inspection was done, interior and exterior, and the items suggested were the condition, flooring, siding, dimensions of the basement. I think that was the basement size, not just the basement finish, and an extra fixture. After making corrections, the assessment record went from 566,400 to 525,600, and we're recommending that amount of an abatement.
So how did it go from good to very good, like on the card?
Good question. It wasn't well documented. So it could be that it was an appropriate adjustment, and it could be that it wasn't. But based on our inspection, we determined that it shouldn't have been changed to very good.
So does the system keep track of changes, like who made the changes?
Yes. Well, it's in there. It's a little bit buried. The AssessPro, the Patriot system, keeps an audit of changes.
But it doesn't give the person that's making these changes have to give a reason for it?
Normally we do. I mean, our policy is when we do an activity, we include a comment. You know, in Patriot, there's a lot of places you can put comments, but on the activity itself, you could put a comment. Or what's been the practice for decades is that a comment is put in the notes section that prints on the back of the card, basically with a description of what you're doing and a date and your initials. Of course, it's abbreviated down because there's only so much space in there. And I don't believe there was a comment on that change, was there?
I, again, have a hypothesis what happened, but I think it took place during what they call field review, which was done by the reval company. They have to have a supervisor, assessor, go down every property in the whole city, but mostly it's done from the outside. So it could be that the outside was redone since the previous time, and estimations were made that the inside was also done, but then upon interior inspection this year,
The peer review was for every property?
the field review is part of the revaluation
I mean,
process.
the
Yeah.
review, yeah, peer review. Wow. Any other questions?
No.
Can I get a motion to approve the abatement for the property at 14 Valiant Lane
So moved. For
Second.
2024.
for 2024? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
I'm going to abstain from this next one.
So the next one is 171 Taylor Street, last name Lyons. This is actually a tax rep that brought this local abatement request, citing numerous items wrong with the property. And had Jessica take a look at this property, and we agreed that there were some issues that were negative. I would tell you that, you know, the impact of the value was not as great in making corrections as what the tax rep was looking for. You know, the way I look at that is we're going to correct the data in the system, and whatever value it results in is, in this case, what we're going to recommend for an abatement. So from 930,700 to 912,900. You know, that tax rep might argue that the value should still be lower, but provided no market data to support that. So we're not recommending going any lower than what the data corrections show.
Yeah, Zillow has it at 823.
And if you check Zillow after our 2024 new assessed values are posted, that number is going to change. We don't know what their algorithms are, but we do know that they take a look at local assessments.
Oh, okay.
And that's part of what they crunch, so, yeah, if only it were that easy. You know, instead of hiring Vision to do an update, we could do Zillow on every property and plug that number in. It's interesting that they also give you a range.
I looked it up.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, they give you a range, and
Yeah, it did give a range into the low 900s, but, any questions, Jay?
No.
You're going to abstain?
I'm abstaining.
All right, can I get a motion to approve the abatement for the property at 171 Taylor Street for 2024?
So moved.
I'll second that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
You know, my valuation on my property went up by about $200,000 on Zillow one day because my cousin, who was moving in from Seattle, couldn't find a house in our town, and he had been looking for a year, and finally this one came up, and he overpaid by $200,000 just because he could, and that drove up my value in Zillow, and I couldn't thank him enough. Way to go.
well, you know, it's interesting, we do have people say that, you know, well, you know, these prices are, you know, you get somebody coming in and overbidding, and I'll agree that if that's the one occurrence, we don't want to hang our hat on that.
Yeah.
But if everybody's doing that, that's the market, and that's the value we need to.
Yeah, a few months later, it came down.
All right, so the next batch are, I believe, all denials, but I do want to explain each as we go through. 4 Tom Alonis Drive should be the next one in your packet.
Yep.
Yes.
This was one where the taxpayer said that there were data errors that he or she wanted corrected, so we did an inspection, made some data corrections, but it didn't drop the value. There were corrections in both directions, and I don't know, did the value go up or just stay the same, Jessica?
I think it's going up for 2025.
Yeah, so it's actually going to go up a
If I
little bit
remember.
going forward.
Yep, you see in the card 1 is 2024, card 2 is 2025.
Yeah, so it's going from 629 to 655. And just so the board is aware, we don't ever just, if somebody says, I just want you to take a look at this one thing that's wrong, I won't agree to do that. To me, it's like we want to make sure we get all the corrections. You know, we're not going to take off the 1,000 square foot deck or shed and ignore that the full basement's finished that we don't have. You know, what's fair is fair, and we want to correct anything that might be incorrect. So we're recommending a denial on the 2024 abatement request on 4 Tom Alonis.
Any questions?
No.
Can I get a motion to deny the abatement request for the property at 4 Tom Alonis Drive for 2024?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Next one,
Right.
Bob?
Yep, the next one in your packet is 7 Crystal Drive. This abatement included information about one sale of the next door property at 5 Crystal Drive. I believe that property sold for $900,000, and the taxpayer made comparisons between that property and his and said, you know, there's no way mine is worth X if this sold for $900,000. But he didn't have correct data about 5 Crystal Drive, especially about the square footage of that property. I believe the square footage source he was using was probably MLS, which will include all finished area in the house. So what he thought was like 50% larger house was actually a little bit smaller than his house. Now, it did have a finished basement, it did have an extra garage, it did have a pool, but all of those items don't necessarily justify that his house wasn't worth the
20-something, 20 or 30.
8, yeah. And then here's a case where, one sale doesn't make a market, right? I would never hang my hat on one sale. It's nice that it's right next door, and if it were identical to the subject, it might be some indication of what the value should have been. So I took a look at that, checked the data, but I also did a search for comparables other than that one, and they appear on the next page. And my criteria generally is style, square footage within a reasonable amount, usually 10%. If it's an unusual property and you don't get a lot of sales, you might expand that. In this case, neighborhood code, which is NG. And then I don't even look for sale price. That's never one of my criteria. All I look at is those physical characteristics and pull those sales out and put them on a spreadsheet and then do some analysis. First thing I look for is there anything in the immediate neighborhood as opposed to just neighborhood NG. But I also take a look at, in this case, what's the median sale price, what's the median square footage, what's the median sale price per square foot. And based on all those criteria, I believe that the assessment of 7 Crystal Drive is reasonable. The assessment is $314.75 a square foot, and the median sales price per square foot of the comparables, the similar comparables, was $317.82. In reviewing this application, when it first came in, I was paying particular attention to the house next door and this house, because if you look at them from the outside, you can picture that they might have been the same house originally. The one next door has had some additions, some work done. And the house at next door at 5 Crystal Drive had some measurements that were different and had some vaulted areas that weren't reflected in the sketch of the subject. So I asked Jessica to reach out to do an interior inspection of the property to make sure that we had that information correct. Certainly if there's a 12 by 12 area at the front entry that's no second floor, that's going to have an impact on the value and we can get it corrected. The owner was pretty hesitant about us going in, but did verify that, in fact, he didn't have any open areas, and he agreed to allow us to check the outside measurements to make sure we had them right, and we do. So there weren't any corrections to those items that might have dropped his value. And so based on the information and research I did, I don't believe he made his case that the abatement should be granted, and we're recommending denial.
Thanks for doing all that work on it. I appreciate that.
Well, this is a tough one because, you do have that sale next door, and, he's hugging that information very hard, and it wouldn't surprise me if this one gets appealed. But, the burden of proof is on the taxpayer, and if he, let's say he appeals to the Board of Tax and Land Appeals, if he goes with that one sale, and I go with a half a dozen sales, I don't think he's going to be successful. I mean, he may have an appraisal done, he may do some further work if he does appeal. And again, if he comes up with something different for information, but certainly not, I think his estimate of value was $690, and there's no way that this is a $690,000 house, no way.
Any other questions?
No.
Can I get a motion to deny the abatement request for the property at 7 Crystal Drive for 2024?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
All right, the next one in your packet is 598 West Hollis Street. Two pieces of data that the taxpayer provided that I really want to point out. One is that this property was recently purchased. and it was purchased for $445 in October of 2024, and our new assessment for '24 is $495. Pretty big difference.
And
Again-
what was the first number you said?
I'm sorry?
Did you say 4.5?
No, $445,000 is the
And,
purchase
okay.
price.
Okay.
So that's one piece of evidence that they're making the argument it should be reduced, but they also provided a list of sales. And in that recommendation letter that's both for you and for my response to the taxpayer, page 1, I found that out of the 9 sales provided, 6 were not arm's length. This is what happens when you seek out sales simply based on a sale price, trying to prove a point. It's obvious that what were grabbed were the bottom half a dozen sales, and of course, if it's an estate sale or something like that, it's going to sell for something different than market value. So I determined that 6 of those sales were not suitable to use because they weren't arm's length. And I do detail, I don't know if you want me to go through each one as to why it's not arm's length.
No, but I'd like you to go through the last 2 paragraphs of section 2, the local review conducted, and explain why their Norwich property is relevant to the
Yeah, I had a
analysis.
question about
Yep.
that, too.
That's a very good one because
I'm nailing it today, aren't I?
When-
That's like my second one.
when you seek, when you challenge your tax burden in the community, you're challenging your entire tax burden on anything you own. That's identical ownership. Now, if you own 20 properties and they're all in different LLCs, it doesn't apply. But if you own multiple properties in identical ownership, if you've got one that's underassessed and one that's overassessed, your tax burden was fair. And that will be recognized by Superior Court or by the Board of Tax and Land Appeals. So, and by the way, I didn't really focus on that until late in my review, when I noticed, you know, I try to always look at what other property do they own. At the time, I didn't realize that 25 Norwich was also a recent sale, and it did sell. So that property sold for $625, and they had an assessment of $512. So that appears to be underassessed. So on top of the sales data, other than the subject sale, and what was the circumstance of that sale? It was,
There was no appraisal done, the seller didn't want an appraisal, I think it was, because we asked, and they said no.
and
the
it was
seller-
tenant occupied.
Yeah, the owner obviously lives elsewhere, and they were going to, he said over the phone, they were thinking of buying it, doing some renovations, and then whatever, he said, but tenants wanted it right away without even renovating it, so they just decided to rent it right away.
So they bought a house with a tenant in it and renewed the lease and kept the tenant in there. So I'm not sure that's really a truly arm's length sale. You know, a single-family home's not your typical rental investment property, at least not in the state of New Hampshire. There are some parts of the country where there are, you know, whole neighborhoods of single-family rental homes, but you don't typically see that in New Hampshire.
So if they had named the Norwich property, you know, the Family Revocable Trust number 2, that would totally negate.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's case law, is that statute, or?
Statute is my recollection. Yeah.
Well, it's, you're challenging the, you know, your tax burden on your whole estate.
Correct,
And your whole estate is whatever you own in the city or town.
yeah.
In that exact ownership.
And that's probably why you see a lot of
LLC.
investors that own a lot of
Yeah.
multifamilies especially, they're not owning them under their name, it's under
Yeah, I'll
LLCs.
tell you something, I own a lot in different LLCs, we don't do it for this reason, because I never even knew this, I never even knew this before.
Yeah, and there are other reasons. I mean, you know, the exposure, if you have a problem with one, you know, if something happens at one property that causes you know, a liability, you know, whether it's a fire and somebody gets injured, or somebody falls and gets injured, you know, having those separate LLCs protects all your other real estate. But it also protects it from that test of your estate for tax purposes, so. But Again, they paid $445, but I don't really trust that number. This was not your typical sale. Did this go through MLS? How did the
Yes,
buyer
we
and seller get
found,
together?
we found an MLS sheet on it.
But we don't, you know,
Can't remember.
and certainly I did take a look for other sales, but where the
you
taxpayer
found-
sales data. So the way I
We
operate
found
when I
a
get.
comp like right on the same street, I think.
Yeah, and actually, there is a comp on the same street. But when I take a look at how much effort am I going to put into this review, one of my tests is how much work did they do and how much work am I going to do? Where the burden of proof is on the taxpayer. Now, if they give me an abatement that says my taxes are too high, I'm going to put as much work into it. I'm going to send them a denial saying, no, they're not, right? I mean, the burden's on them. But if they give me an analysis and a bunch of sales, even if it's not a good analysis, even if it's not good sales, then I do my own search for sales. I didn't provide a lot of information because their estate is fine, even if the correct assessment for the subject property is $445. They didn't experience, they didn't pay an unfair share of the tax burden in the city, because the other property could just as easily be underassessed. Now, if between now and the 2025, well, April 1st has gone by, so if they didn't, let's say they decided, well, I want to separate this and put the property in a different name so that it's not the same estate, they would have had to make that transfer by April 1st. And if you do find that one's overassessed and one's underassessed, no abatement is warranted, but we probably should correct both, if there's solid evidence. I don't believe there's solid evidence that, I'm not going to crank up his other one, the other assessment. I might flag it to say, why 512 versus 6 1/4 on this one. But we're not going to target that for an increase. If he appeals this and it goes to the VTLA or Superior Court, and they say, well, yeah, that one's overassessed, but we agree with you, but the estate is fine, then they may order some kind of adjustment. But I don't plan on doing that in this case.
Any other questions?
No. And I'm just curious, now that I'm looking at all of these abatement information sheets that you give us, we don't get all the sections to it.
They're not always all filled out,
You're talking about the abatement application?
the info sheet that I put together.
Well, it seems.
It's like whenever they've handwritten something on there, I clip that in, and then they
used to
provide-
get the form that the taxpayer submitted. We used to get a summary, and all the summaries were the same. I suppose it's good to have the whole thing, but the summary sheet, if we could get some, especially if we're going to be using other contractors to come in, if we could use a standard form so that we're seeing 17 abatement requests, it's easier to put them together, starting out with each page being the first page being the same, so we understand what the current appraisal was, what the owner says, and what the proposed new assessment is.
Yeah, I just think going forward, I'm looking at this, and this is what caught my eye, is the fact that this revocable trust, this is the first abatement information sheet that we're looking at that shows the wording of Section D where it talks about other properties. On all the other abatement information, we just have a cut and paste from like Section F and G.
Well, because
Right.
they
Nothing
they
there.
don't own any other property.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
My point is, we want the full record.
Okay. So you want the full application?
Everything that they've presented as evidence to show why their assessment should be that assessment.
Okay.
Yeah.
in the packet.
Within reason, I guess, right?
Well,
No, I want everything.
yeah, but if it's an income property and you provide income.
Well, okay, then we start getting into that, then we go into private,
Non-public.
closed session, non-public session.
All right.
Wait, Jessica's given the old.
So again, like to have to provide, so you guys are more than welcome to come and review the actual whole abatement application, but some of these are like that thick.
Not for a residential house are they that thick.
Oh.
Are they?
You'd be surprised.
Well, I can't, that may be an exception to the rule.
Because again, anything that we include in this, we have to include as a public packet, so it needs to be scanned and posted online. So again,
we never
we
used to
just
get
want to
any
know
of
what you guys actually want us to do, and we will be certain to actually do that. But to have to scan every page of every abatement application, when,
Well, they're
The-
scanned, but then to bring them to the meeting
Right.
printed out would be. I mean, we can, take your, whatever comments you have. We created this info sheet 2 years ago when you asked for just what you said. What was their value? What are they, what is their opinion? What is the information they provided? And then what is the assessor recommendations?
Yeah, well, like, take a
And then
look
the
at,
recommendation sheet, which is a little different, Bob's created his own, which is a letter. And then on the ones that are more like data corrections, you have the abatement recommendation sheet, which you asked for on top, so
All right,
that
so
you
if I-
knew the results.
If I could summarize what you're looking for. You want an abatement information sheet that doesn't have a cut and paste of the application. You
Yeah,
just
because
want
if
a
you
list.
take a look at 7 Crystal Drive, what's been cut and pasted and put in here is your decision as to what we should see.
Yes, all the pertinent information that was supplied, without all the blank pages and whatever.
So I'm looking at that as, like, somebody wrote a letter here, a whole explanation, and we're getting just a nutshell, morsel of what they wrote.
All right, so you want
I think
whatever they
communications-
submitted, all of it?
I just think communications from the taxpayer is important,
Okay.
Unabridged.
We never used to get any of it, though, not a word. We'd get the form that the assessor,
Filled out, yeah.
filled out, reviewed the application, did whatever due diligence, he gave us a report.
And then you just agree with what they gave you. I'd just like to see the taxpayers asking for this to be presented to the board. And now the board's making the decision the assessor's office is making the decision what the board gets to see. I'm not saying that there's anything underhanded about this. I just think that you've got to give the taxpayer the opportunity to be heard.
So we just need to know in practice how that physically works. Like, this takes me hours to put together, but what is it,
We're getting you help.
what is the next process? We have packets with all the information, but I don't know how we can provide that to you in a way that
that isn't gonna be
computer-
so cumbersome that like,
will function.
Right,
Like, we
correct.
can't even get our scan through our current printer right now.
yeah.
So-
Like, the actual
It
scan, in order
breaks.
for us to post this online, takes an hour for us to scan, and it goes as two different scans that we now need to change into one PDF using Nitro. So again, like, we just need direction of what you guys actually want.
I think whatever the taxpayer has presented as evidence,
Jay, what do you think?
In its original form.
yeah.
Bob, what's the standard procedure in other cities, do you know?
Well, my experience is, I was the board, so, for instance, in Manchester,
You got to see everything.
we got to see everything, but unless I asked one of my appraisers to provide me some recommendations, Mike Hurley and I, who were the two members for 10 of the 14 years I was there, he'd do mostly residential, I would do mostly commercial, and then we'd split the multifamilies, depending on what the burden was. And we'd make recommendations to each other, but because it was a full-time board, we weren't having a meeting once a month. The 40 hours a week we were both there, we were in session effectively. So we reviewed the whole packet, but I would do the same thing as far as what you're seeing here as far as, my own research and review. And these are the types of letters that I would put together to send to the taxpayer. In fact, what you're seeing here is, I brought copies of what I used for letters in Manchester to populate I don't like to start everything from scratch if I've got a good example of, a letter, so. At this point, I can't tell you what's being done. If Steve were still here, he might be able to tell you what he's doing in his other towns.
So I
I was gonna say, what's your thought on this?
I guess to me, I would say it's a balance. I work with other boards, with other application processes, and we put together agenda packets for other boards, and there is typically discretion because there can be so much material, and a lot of the material isn't necessarily helpful. And so, I think we just have to strike a balance. I do appreciate Charles's concern that we have the ability to see everything the taxpayer submitted. I like seeing the abatement information sheet. It's just a easy,
Yeah.
kind of quick guide for me, so I think that's helpful. If there's blank pages in it, I don't need to see blank pages. So I guess that's kind of the balance that I would see. If there is a lot of supporting material that staff feels is, not necessary for the board to make a reasonable decision, I guess I defer to that. I think we just have to strike a balance between how much material we're going to have and the burden on the staff. So I just to finish that thought, so I went through this packet, and I felt that I could understand a couple of questions here or there, but I felt I could understand why the recommendations that were being made were being made. But I do believe that I have the ability to reach out to staff if I have a question that I couldn't answer. I also do think, though, that if there is a letter from the taxpayer to the board, I think that should be included. So I guess that's kind of where I would come down is, there's a lot of information here now. I think that's valuable. I do like the, abatement information sheet. And again, if there's a letter, we should see that, but I'm open to, facts of the colors.
I just wanted to say, I agree with Jay, and I think it is an issue of discernment. And it's like, if the guy's going to give us a 50-page packet, okay, maybe we can understand, just put a note in the file that, you can, that in here, that come into the office before the meeting and review the 50-page document he's provided. That gets that burden off your back and lets us know that there's more information here.
And I think when the packet goes out, we do indicate that you can take a look at any of the files in the office. If you indulge us to think about this, and,
Yeah.
and what I'm thinking is there a way for us to make those files available? I'll give you an example. I'm on the planning board in Manchester, and I have a login to the website that gives me access to the planning board files, the internal private planning board files that aren't available to the general public when they log into the website. I think what I'm going to suggest is that we investigate whether we can do something like that for the assessors, this board, so that you could log in to the website and look at the entire file without us having to publish it in your packet for sitting up here and for the agenda that we post to the public.
On the Y board, I don't know if Jay remembers this, if they even had it back when Jay was on the board, but they have a board source. There's an actual company that has, all boards of directors can have an online access, and every month I get the board packet from the Y that I review before the board meeting. And what it also, if we did this on the assessors as well, is it can include things like, the legislation, any case law, anything like that. We can just have a link to it right there, so we could be up here looking at it, at each one of these files, and, asking our own questions.
The state Office of Professional Licensure and Certification, I'm on the Assessing Certification Board. They use a
What
service
board are
like
you
that.
not on?
Too many, according to my wife.
Yeah.
So they use Onboard. Does that sound like what?
That's not what the Y uses,
But it is like that.
Same
It's a
idea.
place it's a third-party software package that they set up, and they can post documents. And this one thing I kind of don't like about it is even though it posts the documents and the PDFs, you can't print them. Now, I wouldn't necessarily print the whole packet, but I always want an agenda in front of me, and I have to have them send that to me as a separate PDF and an email, because I can't log into that onboard site, and, you know, everything is print protected. You can't print anything from there, so.
I would certainly appreciate you looking into it, recognizing that I'm sure that from the IT perspective, from the city, there are going to be limitations and potential issues and concerns, and also staffing. I also work with a board that has a portal that all the members can access, but the staff still has to upload everything to that portal, so it doesn't eliminate, you know, the burden on the staff.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to do two things. Streamline it for the staff, and make sure that in those cases where there is private information, that it's not posted in a public agenda.
Exactly.
I mean, that doesn't happen in every
Yeah, that's
case.
nothing new for you to begin with, and, you know, I think Jessica is having one site that she can, instead of having to create 3 or 4 books like this, and then all of us have to come down here to pick it up ahead of time, if we just have one repository for it.
Hey, I like my book.
Yeah, well, on the planning board, I don't get a book, but I upload all the files to my personal tablet and, you know, bring that into the meetings.
So for the time being, we'll continue the way things have been, is that okay?
Well, no, I'd like to get, if we get in communication from the taxpayer, it should be
A
included.
letter from the taxpayer?
Yeah. Communication, I'll leave it at that.
All right. We'll, you know, I don't think you're missing a lot even in these.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot. where we
Understood.
I think the letters were
Because you keep interrupting.
included.
All right, any other questions on 598 West Hollis Street, the 2 properties?
No, I think that was very interesting, Bob. Nice job on that one.
All right, can I get a motion to deny the abatement request for the property at 598 West Hollis Street for 2024?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Next one, Bob?
Yep, next one is 47 Fairview Ave. This is a 1960 ranch, 3-bedroom, 1,040 square feet. The taxpayer provided some sales. Took a look at those sales, and they weren't necessarily similar. It struck me that it looked like they were being selected because of their price. Again, that's the last thing I look at when I search for comp sales. You know, you want comparable properties. So the sales that were provided, 36 Ross Street was smaller, 64 Watson Street was smaller, and 315 Lake Street only had a partial basement, only 2 bedrooms, and was quite a bit older. So I searched for sales that were more similar to a 1,040 square foot, 3-bedroom ranch built in '60, and they're on the next page. And, you know, the sale prices range from $400 to $495. They're all within, again, I try to stick within 10% of square footage, and the ages were like the 50s and the 60s. You know, I think the other thing was, yeah, anyways, these are more similar sales. The Septic had a 1-car attached garage, so that's a pretty significant feature on a modest house, so I indicated what those comp sales had. And I believe they support the subject's 2024 assessed value of $391,500. Again, the lowest sale price was $400. And I didn't select them by sale price. I selected them strictly by, it's a ranch style, it's 3 bedrooms, and the square footage is near 1,040.
You happen to take a look at 3 9th Street? That guy's got a kind of a crazy assessed value.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, we have a lot of abatements. We have, you know, 200 abatements to look at. I'm not going to look at every sale I see. I would tell you that, you know, as the sales come in, they're qualified by former chief assessor. I don't know if they're aware of that Rick is. So we contract to qualify the sales. I know when I qualify sales, if something looks hinky like that, I'm going to do a little digging. I can't tell you if Rick's doing that or not. I know he's making data corrections if he sees something on MLS.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's, you know, not every assessment nails the sale price, but it's not always because the assessment's wrong. I mean, if you look at the range of those sales prices, that's the lowest sale price. Lowest sale price with the highest assessment. I mean, we have a sale at $495 that was assessed at $475. You know. So we're recommending that this be denied. The sales that were provided aren't the most similar, and the sales that are more similar support the assessment.
Any other questions?
No.
Can I get a motion to deny the abatement request for the property at 47 Fairview Ave for 2024?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Next one, Bob?
Yep, next one is 14 Andover Down. This is a condominium unit. The taxpayer provides 4 sales. One of the 4 was reported to be in poor condition at the time of sale. The other 3 sales, if you adjust for appreciation in the market, they support the subject's assessment, and I did provide a list of the sales. So the sale prices, again, the High Bridge was in poor condition, it sold for $300. Everything else was $385 to $426. And these are units that are, you know, the same square footage as the subject. Yeah, same unit type, same square footage. And the subject's assessment is $407,600. And with the sales ranging, the valid sales, or the most similar sales ranging from $385 to $426, the subject's assessment is reasonable. And we recommend denial of the abatement request.
Any questions?
No.
Can I get a motion to deny the abatement request for the property at 14 Andover Down?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
And the next one is 51 Farmington Road. In this case, the taxpayer didn't provide sales. They provided, they pointed out neighboring properties and attempted to do an assessment analysis, basically saying, well, you know, why is my assessment higher than that property? Well, it's because they're not similar properties. The subject's a 2,440 square foot colonial. 47 Farmington is a 1,798 square foot ranch, not similar. And 55 Farmington is a 1,655 square foot ranch. Despite not being provided with any sales data, I did search for sales similar to subject, again, within 10% of the square footage, colonial style, somewhere in the range of year built. So my search criteria is on that chart on the next page. And those sales prices ranged from, well, I broke it down, but no, they range from $630 to $715, and the subject assessment is supported at $613,400. Recommend denial.
Any questions?
No.
Can I get a motion to deny the abatement request for the property at 51 Farmington Road for 2024?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
All right, the next, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 abatements are for fire prorations. The first one is 7 Monica Drive. This property had fire damage, rendering it uninhabitable on October 5th of '24. The proration is that you don't pay taxes for that tax year, in other words, the '24 tax year, while the property cannot be inhabited, and that runs through March 31st. So the days that it was uninhabitable was 178. The per diem taxes on the building only, because you still pay taxes on the land, was 2449, and the prorated refund amount is 4,359 and 22 cents.
Any question? Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Any questions, Jay? Charles, sorry.
Jessica, did you get a look on the inside before you recommended abatement? Just kidding.
No.
Can I get a motion to approve the abatement for fire at the property at 7 Monica Drive for 2024?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
And just to address I know it was a kind of poking at her a little bit, but she does we
There's a
do
couple on there.
investigate,
I went
what
through
the
last week.
status is. Whether they pulled a permit for demo or pulled a permit to repair. Because we're also concerned with how do we list this April 1st to 25 for this tax year. Proration doesn't apply for this tax year. It's whatever's there April 1st. So if it's a total loss, the assessment's can be land only for the whole year, even if it's rebuilt by July. Because that's, the 7621, RSA 7621 proration only applies within the tax year that loss occurs. So, but we try to make sure that, we're looking at how many days they actually had a loss of use. So quite a bit of work goes into it. I think you provided pictures of what they look like today.
Yes.
How do you get notice of this?
Well, this
luckily,
requires an
Michelle-
application, so,
Is it a condemnation notice, or is there a
No.
fire report, or?
well, yeah, so it has to be unintended fire, or if it's arson, it can't be by the hands of the owner. If it's arson by a tenant or something, proration still applies.
Yeah.
So it's unintended fire or a natural disaster, tornado, flood, whatever. We've had some people try to file proration for frozen pipes in the winter. That's not a natural disaster. We have freezing temperatures every winter.
Yeah.
And we have below zero temperatures every winter, so we don't consider that a natural disaster. But there still is a burden on the owner to request a proration. There's an application they have to submit, and they have to submit evidence that it was an accidental fire or that it wasn't arson caused by their hand. I
Yeah, there's
believe-
three methods. We used to have more staff on hand that check these kind of things out. We had commercial assessors, we're more up to speed on things, but my friend Michelle over there keeps me informed when she sees something on the internet,
Yep.
sends me I said, please let me know, because I don't watch the news. And then,
So I guess we've got it pretty well
we
dialed
do get
in.
Yeah.
we do get a fire report like monthly from the fire department that
Oh,
kind of
okay.
said, this is a recap of, it's a little bit behind, but kind of says, these are the things that we had, this was a house fire, this was a vehicle fire, whatever. It gives us something to look into. And then it's a little bit more after the fact, but if a permit is then pulled to either demo portion of a structure that had a fire damage or then restore based on a fire, we flag it. So we go out as soon as we can. If we, get the one that says, there was fire last night on something, be like, Miles, go check it out. But if it's a permit coming in, it's like, okay, well, this is 2 months later, but let's go look at it right now and see where it's at. So that we have a fire folder so we know to look at it on April 1st. Because a lot of times the applicant doesn't know to file that, or they don't file it for several months. And then it's like, well, what did it look like 5 months ago? We didn't know about it. So those three different methods we use, and then we do have we connect with the fire marshal. The applicant is supposed to provide the fire marshal's report. It can be a bit cumbersome, and often that takes several months as well. But I do have a communication with someone at the fire marshal's that I was able to say, hey, have you, we got to wrap these up. Do you have any reports on these? Send them over.
Again, the burden of proof is always on the taxpayer, but on a case like this where this is, for people, this is pretty catastrophic. So we go above and beyond, or Jessica goes above and beyond to get those reports. My experience in Manchester was you don't get a proration request on every fire. I mean, we have it posted in a couple places in City Hall, but we don't chase the fire trucks around trying to pressure people into filing for this. And when this program first came to be, I did kind of try to ask the fire department or the fire marshal, you know, hey, if I provide you with the basic packet, can you hand this out? And there's no interest on their part in doing that, so getting the word out is a little iffy.
The deadline used to be shorter, right? And now it's
Right.
been, it was like 60 days after the fire, but often people are dealing with a lot right then, so they don't think about it until they get the next tax bill. And they
Right.
go, why am I paying taxes on this house that burned down?
Yeah.
So the new law
The Assessing Standards Board fixed that.
allows it through the end of,
I fixed that.
through the end of the tax year, or through March 1st.
Yeah, it used to say.
So that when they get that tax bill, it still gives them time to.
But it's still 60 days, because you could have a fire loss after March 1st and qualify for the proration, because the tax year goes to March 31st. So the period is 60 days or March 1st, whichever is later. All right, the next proration is on 4 to 6 Cross Street. This fire loss was shortly after April 1st, so it's almost the entire year, 312 days. Actually, the data, this one came back online and was occupied before the end of the tax year. So the CO, or the occupancy, was February 25th. So from April 19th of '04 to February 25th of '05 was 300 days of loss of use at $20.99 a day. So the prorated abatement amount is $6,548.88.
Which is why sometimes these sit around for a long time, because we really need to know, are they getting back in it this year? And we can't guess, so we gotta wait till the end of the year to figure out how many days it was. Or, they, you know, on this one, they got the CO.
If you're for sure that it's not going to come back online by March 31st, you can actually make this adjustment for the final tax bill, so it's not an abatement. And I would do that in Manchester. So if it's a total loss, you're not getting it back by March 31st. I would do the proration on the assessment so that that final tax bill that went out was the correct burden for fire loss. But if there's any chance something's going to come back online, unless the taxpayer agrees to pay me for the days it comes back online, you know, after the fact, then I would, like what we've done with these, is wait until this time of year to find out if they were lost through March 31st or not.
Any questions?
No.
Can I get a motion to approve the abatement for the property at 4 to 6 Cross Street for 2024?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
All right, the next one is 185, 187 West Hollis Street. Jessica, was this a 2023?
Yes, the next
Proration?
two are from 2023.
Okay. So these were a couple that probably should have been done about a year ago that weren't.
Right about a year ago, when it was a little busy.
Yeah. So it's, yes, it's the next two, number 14 and number 15. And there's a summary sheet on the front part of that packet that shows you what the refund proration period, what the refund is. And it's $1,782.49 for Langhome and $2,934.79 for West Hollis.
So they happened towards the end of 2023, so like Bob was saying, the proration period just went until March of 2024. And then we went out, I did go out for the April 1st of 2024 on these and put them into a certain construction status for 2024. So 2024 is fine, it was either 0 or 50% or whatever it was at. But we just hadn't got back to these to give them their proration for 2023 into the beginning of 2024. They've been since, I inspected both this week, they've been since rebuilt and habitable and all that. So adjustments have been made for their 2025 card accordingly.
Any questions?
No.
All right, can I get a motion to approve the abatement for the property at 185, 187 West Hollis Street for 2023?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Can I get a motion to approve the abatement for the property at 86 Langholm Drive for 2023?
So moved.
Second.
All those, any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
All right, and the last fire proration was for an entire garden-style condominium building at Bluestone Drive. How many units were it?
It's about 30, it's like unit 61 to 90.
So the fire loss was July 16th of 2024. Most of these units received an occupancy permit for February 1st of '25. My understanding is the end of the building where it had direct fire took a little longer to repair, so there's a few of these units that had an occupancy permit later, one on February 8th, and then a couple on March 3rd. But if you look at that spreadsheet I included, we've calculated the number of days loss of use based on that fire loss and then the occupancy date, and percentage of the building value that's a loss because of that 200 days or 230 days, the assessment of that particular unit, the assessment amount to be abated, and then the last column is the taxes to be refunded.
So this was a garden-style condo, so each individual garden-style unit is owned separately by an owner. So we did receive and went back and forth with the president of their condo association several times, and he helped us communicate with everybody individually so we could get applications on file for everybody individually. It's one building, but it's not one application, it's 30 or whatever.
And we did end up with everybody.
We did end
finally.
up with everybody.
I had a similar situation in Manchester where it was a 36-unit building, and I had maybe 6 or 8 people never filed. So they didn't get the proration for that year. And we did reach out, like with this one, reaching out to the Owners Association, reaching out directly to whatever we had for contact address, and we need a signed application to make that proration. In this case, you have them all, so the recommendation
And they're
is to
different, you see different amounts and such. They're different square footages, therefore they have different assessed values. Some are 1 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms or whatever it is. You might look at a couple and go, well, why is this one?
So this is all one building, but the address is 61-90, what is,
No, they all have individual addresses. I think it's on the spreadsheet.
Yeah, under.
61
Oh, 61
Bluestone,
through
62
90.
Bluestone, 63 Bluestone.
So it's
It goes all
30
the way up to 90.
30 units in the
Right.
building?
Yeah.
You see that all right here.
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah.
And then we had staff confirm they filled out the proration form at various times. Obviously, these people were not living in this unit for this whole chunk of time, so we did connect back with them, the staff, the last week or two, and reconfirmed their proper mailing addresses for the moment, because obviously they're staying other places, or some of them have moved back, but, so that we know where to send the notification and/or check.
Any questions?
No.
All right, can I get a motion to approve the group of abatements for the properties from 61 to 90 at Bluestone condos
So
for
moved.
2024? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay, the ayes have it.
All right, and the last item on our list, number 17, is we have 97 2024 solar exemptions for approval. These have all been reviewed by staff. The solar feature has been listed on all these properties, and we have applications for the solar exemption on all these properties. So we're asking for approval of 97 solar exemptions.
Per the list provided.
Yeah, it's a 4-page list that all the account numbers and addresses are listed.
We should make them sign, everyone.
Yeah, right?
We have that.
Well, I'd like to see the letters from all the property owners first.
Okay?
No
Going
letters.
down.
April Fool's was the
No
other
letters.
day, it's not today.
Exactly.
Like,
No letters.
No letters.
Just application.
Yeah, lucky you.
So the abatement is for the value, the amount of,
Yeah, it's an
Expense of
exemption, not,
putting-
The,
It's not an
the,
abatement.
the exemption is just basically the actual value that the solar panels added to the property itself, yeah.
yeah, so they vary. They're not all the same
Yeah.
amount. It's not like an elderly exemption, where
Right.
if you're 80 and over, it's a fixed amount.
can I get a motion to approve the list of solar exemption abatements for 2024?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
And that concludes our new business items.
Forty down, 100 to go,
Exactly right.
100 residential,
Okay.
100 commercial.
Public comments?
You want to say anything? Yes. You can go to the microphone here.
I'm at 77 Bluestone Drive,
What's the street?
77 Bluestone Drive, the
Bluestone.
apartment building that was on fire.
Oh, okay. And your name is?
Binu Thapa.
I'm gonna go look for
You can get it for it. Oh, yeah, it is here.
I don't think it's on there. Oh, maybe it is, 61 and 90. You were involved?
Yeah,
Binu
Okay.
Thapa, yeah, he's here on the list.
on the list there,
70.
77, unit number 77.
Here we
Okay, Binu Thapa, yep.
go. You Tapa, yep, gotcha.
Yeah. I submitted my application for the exemption on the March 18th, which was one day late. And there was a little bit of miscommunication. I thought it was due by March 31st. That's why it was late, but it was due by March 17th. So I just wanted to request for consideration for the application for abatement.
So this was approved with the
It was
bachelor
approved.
Right,
Oh,
yeah.
it was approved with that, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Oh, so you're good.
Good.
Yeah.
All right,
I
thank
knew
you.
you were coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. And one more question I have. So with occupancy, do we have to get inspected before occupancy, or right now they are doing painting and then carpet is all out, you know? It's not occupied.
That's the
Yeah,
type
we
of
can-
question you want to take
Yeah,
to
I'll take
to the corporation counsel and ask him whether you do or not.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe the building.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was an easy one.
Yeah. Comments by members of the board?
I have none.
None?
None here. Let's go to non-public. Can I get a motion to go into non-public for two reasons? First, to discuss matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of this board, unless such person requests an open meeting. This exemption shall extend to include any application for assistance or tax abatement or waiver of a fee, fine, or other levy if based on inability to pay or poverty of the applicant pursuant to RSA 90, Section 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, Section C. Second, under 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, Section L, for the consideration of legal advice provided by legal counsel, either in writing or orally, to one or more members of the public body, even where legal counsel is not present.
So moved.
Second.
Do a roll call. Jay Mancara,
Aye.
Charles Dobbins,
Aye.
Robert Early, aye. We're in non-public at 10:44.